Okay, let's unpack this. We have a really heavy, but I think incredibly necessary deep dive for you today.
Hmm.
We're focusing on a topic that, it often sits right at the heart of family conflict, of intergenerational anxiety,
Mm.
and ultimately success.
Yeah, we're talking about property, responsibility, and intentional planning.
And we are not looking at high-level financial theory today. This is really about the tough structural work that's required to make sure that what you spend a lifetime building,
Yeah.
well, that it actually survives you.
And our mission today is to really cut through the sentimentality around this. We're looking at the profound intersection of property transfer and, I guess, cultural duty.
Specifically through a certain lens.
Exactly,
Yeah,
specifically through the really insightful lens of the Jamaican real estate market and its deeply rooted traditions. The source material we have is just exceptional.
it really
It
is.
provides so much clarity on principles that feel universal, but they're made
Mhm.
just starkly clear in a culture where land is so much more than just an asset.
And that's the core hook, isn't it? That's what grabbed me immediately.
Right.
This realization that in this specific cultural context, land is never just land. It's memory, it's struggle.
It's the physical manifestation of progress.
Yeah, it's the one thing that generations have fought hardest not to lose. And that just shifts the conversation instantly from, net worth to legacy.
It connects ownership directly to personal sacrifice, to historical sacrifice.
So when you inherit a piece of land in Jamaica, you're not just getting a deed.
No, not at all. You are inheriting the memory of the struggle that secured it.
Hmm.
And that history, it imposes this specific non-monetary duty on you, the inheritor, to protect it, to preserve it.
And the insights we're drawing from, they're not just abstract. They come straight from a source authority here.
That's right. Dean Jones. He's a chartered builder, a project manager, licensed real estate professional.
And the founder of Jamaica Homes.
Exactly. So he provides that vital blend of, on-the-ground experience with the legal and the structural knowledge. You need both.
You absolutely do.
And he hands us the central thesis that really has to guide every single decision we're going to talk about today.
This is the one quote to remember.
He defines the standard for this entire deep dive when he says, inheritance is not about what you leave behind, it's about what you leave prepared.
Wow. That's a complete reframing, isn't it?
It changes everything.
It says the value isn't in the asset itself. It's in the clarity, the structure you create around it.
Right. It's an active verb preparation.
Not a passive result. The asset is just the result. The preparation is the work. And I would argue it's the greatest gift you can leave.
I think you're right. So let's start there with property as meaning.
The foundation of legacy.
What's so fascinating here is just the sheer depth of meaning that's attached to property in this culture. It profoundly transcends the typical definition of, a monetary investment.
Right. When the source talks about struggle, what are we actually talking about?
We're talking about historical battles for economic independence, the challenges of just getting a title after emancipation,
Sweat equity.
the sweat equity, and the decades of remittances sent home from abroad, by diaspora members, just to hold that property together.
And the scale of the property doesn't even matter, does it?
Not at all.
It could be this huge sprawling acreage or just a small rural family lot passed down for generations. The value isn't in the square footage.
No, it's measured in the memory of the sacrifice. And this is why it becomes so deeply personal, so emotionally fraught when you start talking about selling it or dividing it up.
Absolutely. We see everything from those rural lots, which, they might have been passed down informally for 100 years, maybe without complete or correct paperwork,
A very common issue.
all the way to these meticulously built and cared for urban homes. But the theme is always the same, isn't it?
Always. That this property was held together through immense personal sacrifice. And if you're the one inheriting it, well, you're inheriting that entire story.
And this leads us right into the structural importance of the children in this whole system. They're the future, sure, but they're also this crucial structural element that carries the family forward.
Precisely. And the sources really emphasize the immense long-term implications when parents fail to organize.
There's a slogan they use that's
It's powerful.
It is. What we leave them determines whether they stand on something solid or spend their lives repairing what we failed to organize.
That's the ultimate choice, isn't it?
It's everything.
Are you leaving them a solid foundation to build the next level of the family's economic progress? Or are you handing them a full-time job of, retrospective repair?
And think about the cost of that repair job.
Oh, it's not just money.
It's not just legal fees to sort out a title from the 1950s, it's emotional. It's years of family dinners where this property dispute just poisons the atmosphere.
Right.
It's the stress of trying to get a bank loan or start a business, and you find out the one asset that could be your collateral is legally frozen because the paperwork from 3 generations ago was never finalized. All that time, all that energy, all that money, it should have been spent creating something new.
And instead, it's spent fixing the past. It turns an anchor asset into an anchor weight.
That wasted potential. That is the cost of disorder. It basically guarantees the next generation starts from a position of depletion, not strength.
And to ground these principles, we have to recognize where they even come from.
Right, this isn't new.
Not at all. The source material is really clear that a lot of these foundational Jamaican ideas about family and land and responsibility, they're not just modern legal concepts.
They go way back.
They're derived from fundamental biblical principles and, just shared common sense that predates our whole contemporary legal system.
That enduring principle, which you hear across cultures and centuries, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children.
Exactly. It's a mandate for continuous multi-generational planning.
It's not just about setting up your son or daughter.
No, it's about preparing the ground for the great-grandchildren you might never even meet.
And that leads us to what you call the non-negotiable starting line.
Yes. If we're talking about planning 2 generations deep, the inheritance does not begin with the property itself. Not the deed, not the house, not the physical asset.
It begins with order.
It begins with order.
So why is order so critical as the prerequisite? I mean, why can't the asset itself be the organizing principle?
Because the material asset is, by its nature, passive. The property is just a piece of land until the legal structure around it activates its utility.
Okay.
So if the foundation of the transfer, the legal structure, the intentions, the family agreement, if that's disorderly, the asset is instantly compromised.
So the order is the framework, is what allows the asset to actually be used to be sold or borrowed against or passed on seamlessly.
Without it, the value is frozen. It's just a number on a page.
So order is what honors the memory in the struggle.
Mm.
It ensures the asset is actually useful instead of just, watching it get consumed by bureaucracy or family fights.
That's it, exactly.
Which brings us to a huge philosophical obstacle.
Principle 1. Order is a parental responsibility.
Right. And the biggest hurdle here is that mentality you hear so often.
Yeah.
I'll be gone. The children will sort it out.
It's a kind of willful avoidance, isn't it?
It is.
And it is the ultimate delegation of responsibility to people who are completely ill-equipped to handle it. You are handing your grieving children a puzzle with no pieces.
And forcing them into these complex, often adversarial negotiations with their own siblings.
Exactly. And the source material highlights that history, both ancient and modern, is just full of warnings about this approach.
The analogy they use is brilliant. King David in his final days. The succession was left intentionally unclear, and that created an immediate vacuum.
And what fills a vacuum of order?
Pressure, conflict, competition. It wasn't a peaceful transition, was it?
Not at all. It required aggressive intervention just to reestablish the structural leadership. And that timeless lesson is exactly what Dean Jones distills for us.
Disorder is not neutral.
Disorder is not neutral. You can't think of leaving things vague as just leaving options open. It is an active, corrosive force.
I think his statement on this should be pinned to every estate planner's wall.
I agree. He says, when you leave things unclear, you don't leave freedom, you leave conflict.
You're not offering flexibility. You are actively introducing friction into the family unit.
That's it.
But I have to ask, doesn't leaving things vague sometimes prevent conflict? Say a parent has 2 kids. One is super responsible, the other one's not.
The classic dilemma.
Right. If the parent tries to divide things unequally, they risk immediate, visible conflict. Isn't that sometimes worse than just, kicking the can down the road?
That is the avoidance trap, and we'll get into that a bit more later. But the short answer is usually no.
Really?
An immediate, honest, though difficult conversation prevents a far greater, more structural conflict later on. Conflict deferred is conflict compounded.
So when it comes back later, it's bigger.
It's much bigger. And it's not just personal disagreement anymore. It's a fight over assets that are desperately needed for survival.
Okay, let's get really concrete with the Jamaican reality here. The source outlines some devastating, real-world consequences of this disorder. So can you walk us through the mechanics of how this plays out locally?
The list is It's just tragic because it represents the destruction of wealth through administrative inertia.
Okay.
We see siblings fighting over the boundaries of family land, not knowing who has the right to use what. We see homes, commercial properties, tied up in probate for decades.
For decades. Let's pause on that.
Yeah.
To really understand the depth of that, what does that mean in practice? How does probate work in Jamaica?
Well, especially with old titles. If the parent died without a will, the family has to apply for what's called letters of administration.
Which sounds simple enough.
But it's not. It can be incredibly complex if there are multiple children, especially if some have migrated and are hard to locate.
Or if there's no clear documentation.
Which is a common issue with older properties. So you're trying to prove lineage, track down potential heirs, get signatures from overseas, sort out competing claims. All of this takes years. Often it stretches to 5, 10, even 20 years.
So even if the property is technically valuable, let's say 50 million JMD, that asset is completely inaccessible.
It's frozen wealth. That's the perfect term for it.
You can't do anything with it.
Exactly. It can't be sold. It cannot be used as collateral to secure a business loan or a mortgage. And maybe worst of all, because no single person has legal authority, the property itself often deteriorates.
Of course. Who's going to pay for a new roof?
If no one can legally enforce their ownership or claim an expense.
So the property loses value year after year, guaranteeing that the original owner's struggle was ultimately for nothing.
It's a systemic economic drain.
Wow.
You left them wealth, but you didn't leave them the authority to govern it.
Which makes the wealth functionally useless.
And that is why the necessary reframing here is that order is relief. It's not control.
That's a great distinction.
It is giving your children the immense relief of knowing the process is clear, the title is certain, and they can focus their energy on building, not on legal detective work and family grudges.
Relief from that kind of conflict.
Yeah.
That's a true form of structural support.
Which moves us into principle 2, a really crucial cultural philosophy difference.
Generational thinking versus independence thinking.
Exactly. Modern Western culture, it heavily celebrates independence thinking.
The child moves out, starts fresh, builds their own wealth structure, completely separate from the parents.
And often liquidates family assets for immediate cash.
It's the whole pull yourself up by your own bootstraps narrative, isn't it?
It is, which often translates to selling the family home to fund a new life somewhere else, and in doing so, you reset the clock to 0.
But the sources stress that traditional Caribbean and Jamaican culture leans powerfully towards something different.
Towards continuity. And we see this in the social structure. The centrality of the family home, grandparents often raising children, kids returning home.
And land being shared or expanded on, not sold off.
Right. The family unit is meant to extend forward, not fracture into these disconnected parts every 20 years.
So if continuity is the goal, what's the economic hazard of that independence thinking?
It's the compounding progress killer.
The compounding progress killer. I like that.
Dean Jones states it very plainly. A family without generational thinking ends up restarting from 0 every time.
Right. So if the first generation buys a property and the second sells it to finance, I don't know, a temporary move or some short-term need,
then the third generation has to work twice as hard just to afford a down payment on a new starter home.
all the accumulated capital and struggle are just gone, erased.
Wiped out.
I want to focus on that phrase you used, compounding progress. Property, especially titled land, is one of the few assets that allows a family to do that, to compound wealth generationally. How does that compounding actually manifest in a practical sense?
It manifests as time, collateral, and leverage. Imagine a family that keeps a core piece of land, and the title is clear. After 50 years, the original investment has appreciated significantly. That land immediately provides the third generation with non-toxic, pre-established collateral.
For what, though?
For a massive business expansion or for higher education, often at a fraction of the cost or risk compared to someone starting cold.
So the second generation provides the foundation.
And the third generation leverages it for growth. It bypasses decades of necessary saving and capital accumulation.
So if I buy a house today and my children use that equity to fund their children's education in 30 years, that's compounding progress.
That is compounding progress.
But if they sell the house today and spend the cash, the benefit is immediate, but the progress resets.
Exactly. But it's so vital to clarify this. This thinking is about creating a platform, not imposing a rigid obligation.
Right, doesn't mean you have to live there.
No. Generational thinking doesn't mean forcing a child to manage a farm if they're an engineer living abroad. It means preserving the asset so that if that engineer needs capital for a startup, the family land can be leveraged.
Or if they just need a safety net.
Or if they need a safety net, the land is still there as a collective asset. It's a source of collective strength.
So it changes the focus from my slice of the pie to how big can we make the family pie?
That's a perfect way to put it. It transforms inheritance from a final transactional payoff into an ongoing engine of opportunity.
Okay, we've established the structural order has to come first.
Right.
Now we need to move into the mindset, the crucial element of mindset,
Principle 3.
which addresses the quiet fear of every parent.
Mm-hmm.
Will this inheritance help my children, or will it harm them?
And that fear is ancient, and it's completely justified. Wealth is a tool, and like any powerful tool, it requires responsibility to wield it.
Right.
The sources highlight that without the proper mental framework, a sudden large infusion of wealth can just utterly destabilize a young person's life.
We call it the lottery effect, right?
It's exactly what it is.
People suddenly get this massive, unexpected, and unearned capital, and they often lack the structure, the emotional, financial, the relational discipline to manage it.
And they burn through it, they lose friends, sometimes they ruin their own lives because the sudden freedom is just overwhelming.
Yeah. And inheritance is not immune to that effect.
Not at all. If a parent gifts a fully paid off house to a child who's never managed debt, never respected maintenance, never budgeted, that asset can become a quick source of cash to fund irresponsible behavior.
Or worse, it can just be neglected until it loses all its value.
So the structure collapses because the character was missing.
Dean Jones gives us a foundational maxim for this. He says, money without values is noise. It amplifies who someone already is.
That amplification effect is key. If a person is already financially savvy, disciplined, and community-minded, wealth amplifies their ability to do good things.
But if they're impulsive or prone to addiction or just fundamentally lazy,
Wealth simply gives them the financial runway to accelerate their self-destructive tendencies. The wealth doesn't change the person, it just reveals and funds the existing character.
so the implication is clear. The first inheritance has to be non-financial. Before you transfer a title, you have to transfer a durable mindset.
Yes.
What are the specific, crucial, non-financial components that have to come before the property, according to the source material?
The list is basically the parental syllabus for legacy.
Okay.
Work ethic, accountability, financial literacy, and a profound respect for land and responsibility.
Let's break those down a little more conversationally, because just saying work ethic isn't enough.
Yep.
How does a parent practically transfer a respect for land in a way that actually sticks?
It happens by involving the children in the maintenance and the history of the land early on.
So they have skin in the game.
Exactly. If they help clean or repair or paint, or if they simply hear the stories of how hard it was to acquire, the property becomes sacred. It becomes a memory to be preserved, not just a disposable commodity.
So respect for land means understanding it's finite, irreplaceable.
And that creates a psychological barrier against quick, short-sighted sales.
And financial literacy. That has to go beyond just balancing a checkbook, right?
Well, absolutely. In the context of inheriting a property, it means understanding things like property tax schedules, insurance coverage, and the difference between equity and cash.
The literacy of stewardship.
That's it. A child needs to understand that owning $1 million asset comes with significant annual responsibilities, and if they can't fund the upkeep, the asset will be lost just as surely as if they spent it recklessly.
So the goal is making sure the property supports the values.
It should reinforce diligence and forward planning. It should never replace those values by creating an expectation of some unearned, passive income stream.
You have to teach them to handle the responsibility of ownership before they possess the power of ownership.
Perfectly said. Which brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most challenging part of legacy planning for any parent.
Principle 4. Equal love does not mean equal distribution.
And this is tough, regardless of culture or wealth level.
It's so counterintuitive.
It is. We are conditioned to believe that if we love our children equally, we must treat them equally, which means, mathematically identical division of assets.
But the source makes a really crass distinction here.
It does. It says that loving children equally does not require treating them identically in an inheritance.
And I appreciate that the source acknowledges how hard this is.
Yeah.
Because the moment you suggest unequal distribution, the fear of a family blow-up, of resentment, the eternal favorite child accusation, it just skyrockets.
It does.
So why is this distinction, this idea of unequal distribution, so necessary for a family's survival?
Because treating people identically who have different needs, different capacities, and different life situations is in itself inherently unfair.
How so?
The goal is the family's structural survival, and sometimes equal division is the very thing that guarantees the family asset will be liquidated and the family structure will be fractured.
And we see this played out in history, too. The source mentions that even ancient inheritance texts often adjusted distribution based on responsibility or capacity.
Not just simple birth order. This is a timeless necessity.
So let's talk about modern differentiation. Give us an example.
Okay. Imagine you have 3 children. Child A is a successful CEO, already wealthy. Child B is a loving individual who dedicated their life to caring for you, the parent, and lives on the property. And child C is struggling with chronic health issues and needs ongoing medical care.
So if the parent gives them all 33% of the family house, the result is, well, it's disastrous for continuity.
Precisely. Child A doesn't need the property equity, but now they have this complex, illiquid asset to deal with. Child B, who lives there, now faces a hostile demand for a sale from Child A because they want their 33% cash.
And child C's medical needs aren't addressed at all because a fraction of an illiquid property doesn't pay hospital bills.
So a courageous parent might say, okay, Child B gets the house and its operational value to continue the generational mission. Child C receives a disproportionate amount of the cash savings to cover medical expenses.
And child A, who is already established, receives a smaller token, or maybe nothing, with a full explanation that they have the least need, and the focus has to be on those who need the platform most.
That is structural fairness. It aims at the outcome, which is keeping the family intact and providing maximum stability where it's needed most.
This is where Dean Jones crystallizes it. He says, fair is not always equal. Fair is what keeps the family intact after you're gone.
That's the goal.
I think we have to pause here because this is the emotional core of the decision. The source talks about the pervasive avoidance trap, avoiding these hard decisions out of fear of resentment. When a parent refuses to make these difficult, differentiated choices, what's the ultimate price?
The ultimate price is that you trade a painful but necessary conversation today for a long, drawn-out, litigious, and devastating conflict tomorrow.
So you're just delaying the explosion.
And making it bigger. The parent who avoids the decision ensures that the family asset will be dragged into probate or sold or just deteriorate because the children can't agree. The resentment that was feared during life is now cemented legally in death, consuming the very resource everyone was supposed to benefit from.
So the parent has to make a choice. Which is the greater act of love, the one that gives immediate emotional comfort to the parent?
Or the one that ensures the family structure and the legacy asset survive and thrive for the next generation?
The second choice requires immense courage and clarity.
It does. And that brings us to the 5th and final principle.
The deepest one.
I think so. We've saved the most philosophical principle for last, and it really serves as the North Star for all of this planning.
Inheritance is a mission, not a transaction.
We have to shift the focus from the asset itself, the possession, to its enduring purpose.
This forces you, the listener, to do an inventory check that goes way beyond a market appraisal.
Yeah, you have to ask, what is this land for? What story does it continue? Is this house just shelter, or is it a central hub for family gatherings, for educational support, for community development?
And when you define that mission, you give the asset resilience.
You do. Dean Jones observes that if you only leave property, you've left something that's inherently fragile. Assets can be lost in market crashes through poor management or litigation, but if you leave purpose, the property has a chance to survive you.
Purpose is the non-material anchor. If the family has a clear, agreed-upon mission like, this land must always serve as economic collateral for education, but can never be sold for short-term consumption.
Then any disagreements over its use have a guiding document, a reference point.
That's a definition of resilience, isn't it? If one family member wants to sell, the others can refer back to the mission statement and the shared value system. It strengthens their resolve.
And this is especially vital in the Jamaican context, where, as we said, land often outlives the quality of the paperwork. The paper might be messy, the deed might be imperfect.
But the family memory and the understood mission persist.
Exactly. They serve as the cultural glue that holds the collective claim together, even when the legal system is slow.
So the mission provides the staying power when the title doesn't.
which is the sharp pivot where philosophy meets cold, hard law.
The legal reality check.
Yes. The transition of wealth, no matter how strong the mission or the intention, relies on flawless execution. And this is where the vast majority of well-meaning plans they collapse.
Through the reliance on so-called shortcuts.
The illusion of shortcuts. In the U.S. and other common law jurisdictions, there's a constant marketing push for fast, simple probate avoidance tools.
The transfer on death deed, the ladybird deed, all these different kinds of trusts, they're all pitched as the perfect way to skip court.
And while those tools do have their place, they are absolutely not a panacea. The source material is essential reading for anyone considering these.
Because they look simple.
But they often hide massive complexity and introduce new forms of uncertainty that defeat the whole purpose of planning in the first place.
Okay, give us the Nevada example the source provides. A family used a transfer on death deed, believing the property transfer would be instant and seamless when the parent died. What was the reality?
The reality was that the beneficiaries face a debilitating 6-month waiting period and extensive scrutiny before any major title insurance company would issue coverage to a potential buyer.
So the asset was frozen.
Essentially frozen for half a year at the exact moment the family needed to liquidate or refinance.
But why? I don't get it. If the deed says the property transfers, why do title companies care?
Because of the principle of certainty. This is what Dean Jones emphasizes. Title insurers don't care about your intention, they care about certainty.
Okay.
A title company's entire job is to mitigate the risk of a claim surfacing later, a hidden creditor, an unknown heir, a tax lien that wasn't properly discharged.
Ah. So when you bypass the formal court-supervised process of probate, you're also bypassing the legal mechanism that's designed to officially extinguish those lurking claims.
You've got it. The title company is basically self-imposing a miniature probate period, aren't they? They're waiting 6 months to see if any unknown creditor pops up, because if one does, the title company is on the hook.
So the attempt to skip the official court process just shifts the risk and the delay to the private sector.
Yes. Instead of facing probate delays up front, you face a sale delay, often years later when certainty is critically needed.
The warning here is,
anything that looks simple in estate planning usually hides complexity. That's the necessary caution.
and when we bring this back to the Jamaican context, the situation is often far more complex because of decades of historical informality.
Far more. We're talking about massive probate delays, intractable issues with the transmission of land, and a proliferation of unadministered estates, where the true legal owner has been dead for years and no one has applied for legal authority.
That's the reality.
Mhm.
And this is why the most common, seemingly innocent shortcut that families take often leads to the worst consequences.
Simply putting a child on the deed before the parent passes away.
People think they're achieving simple survivorship, guaranteeing the child gets the asset immediately.
But the reality is catastrophic.
So let's dedicate some serious time to breaking down the specific financial and legal consequences of this one shortcut, as detailed in the source material.
The first and often the largest consequence is the loss of the step-up valuation. And this is crucial for you to understand.
Let's use a hypothetical.
Okay. Let's say a parent bought the family home in 1970 for $50,000. Today, it's worth $500,000.
So it's $450,000 in appreciation.
Right. Now, if the parent keeps the house until they die, and the child inherits it through a proper will, the cost basis, the value used to calculate capital gains tax, steps up to the fair market value at the date of death.
Which is the full $500,000.
Correct. So if the child sells it the next day for $500,000, their capital gain is zero. No tax bill on all that appreciation.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if the parent puts the child on the deed before death, the child inherits the parent's original cost basis, that low $50,000 figure. This is called a gift basis.
And what happens then?
When the child sells the house for $500,000, they are now liable for capital gains tax on the full $450,000 of appreciation.
That's a huge tax bill.
It can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It could potentially wipe out a third of the value the parent intended to transfer. That one shortcut just guaranteed a massive tax loss.
That is immense. It's a deferred expense that just sabotages the inheritance years later. But it's not just tax liability, is it? It's also instant risk.
Oh, absolutely. Once the child is on the deed, the property is now exposed to their creditors.
Oh.
So if that child faces a severe personal crisis, a massive lawsuit, a debilitating business bankruptcy, a nasty divorce, The family's core asset can be claimed by the child's personal creditors.
So the parents, who struggled for decades to secure the land, have now subjected it to the financial management skills of the next generation while they are still alive.
It turns a generational asset into an immediate personal liability for the entire family. It completely undermines the idea of a collective protective platform.
And there are other issues too, right? Like gift taxes or...
Exactly. The transfer might trigger gift tax considerations, and it can disqualify the parent or the child from certain needs-based government benefits because the property value is now counted against both of them.
This is why Dean Jones issues that definitive warning on this topic.
He does. He says, shortcuts in property law don't disappear. They resurface at the worst possible time, usually when someone needs to sell, borrow, or survive.
They don't vanish. They just lie dormant, like a concealed flaw in a foundation.
Waiting for a high-stakes, high-stress moment like a family crisis or a sudden market opportunity to cause the maximum amount of pain and paralysis.
The lesson is clear. Legal preparation isn't an optional cost. It's preventative maintenance for the future of the family.
So synthesizing everything we've learned through these 5 principles, the goal of effective legacy planning is singular.
And what's that?
Leaving property should feel like laying down roots, not tying knots.
We want solid ground for the next generation, not complex bureaucratic entanglement.
Exactly. And laying those roots requires specific, intentional, legally sound action. And it has to be grounded in the realities of the specific jurisdiction, like Jamaican law.
So what are the non-negotiable requirements for successful execution?
Firstly, proper wills. Legally executed and regularly updated, they are essential. They eliminate the agonizing process of letters of administration and minimize the risk of unadministered estates.
And second,
Seeking legal advice that is explicitly grounded in local law. Do not rely on assumptions based on what a relative did in Florida or London. The laws for probate, land transmission, taxation, they are unique to Jamaica and have to be treated as such.
and the soft work has to run parallel to the legal work. We talked about it earlier, but it deserves to be said again.
Clear, honest communication with the children about the plan, about the mission, and the reasons for any unequal distribution.
And this conversation has to happen before the parent is incapacitated or gone, not afterwards.
Absolutely. And the conversation has to cover the asset's ongoing viability. The parent has to be realistic about the costs, the ongoing care, maintenance, taxes, the effects of aging on the physical structure.
Because if you leave a beautiful but decaying large property that needs massive investment and the child has no income to support it,
You've left them a burden that will lead to a forced, desperate sale.
the universal desire, regardless of where you are, is what Dean Jones sums up so well. He says, I don't want my son fighting the system after I'm gone. I want him to continue.
That phrase just encompasses all 5 principles, doesn't it? It demands order, structural clarity, and a platform, not a project.
It's the structural definition of success. You want the next generation operating at a higher level, building on your foundation.
Not fighting the foundational fight all over again.
Which brings us to the final reflection. The ultimate test of a true legacy, moving past titles and dollar signs and focusing entirely on impact.
The question we have to ask ourselves isn't just, how much wealth did I amass?
It's, what will posterity say about what I left them? Not materially, but structurally.
Did you make their lives structurally easier? Or did you, through avoidance or fear, create a complex entanglement that consumed their emotional and financial resources for a decade?
Did the memory of the struggle survive? Or did the struggle itself continue because of your failure to organize?
And that leads us to Dean Jones's definitive, powerful conclusion, which brings this entire deep dive full circle and defines the metric for successful intergenerational planning.
Legacy is not what survives you. It's what works without you.
That is the ultimate gold standard. A system, a structure, a set of values, and an asset that continues to function, serve its mission, and benefit the family without the guiding hand or immediate presence of the original creator.
That is the definition of enduring order.
It is.
So what does this all mean? We've taken a powerful deep dive into the work of intentional planning, guided by the structural realities of the Jamaican context.
A really important one.
For you, the learner, the key takeaways are those 5 principles that transform passive asset transfer into active legacy creation.
We need order as a parental responsibility. It's relief from future conflict.
We need generational thinking to ensure compounding progress, not constantly restarting from zero.
We have to install values-first work ethic, accountability, financial literacy, because property without that structure is a dangerous gift.
We must have the courage to realize that fair is not always equal, making clear, differentiated decisions that preserve the family unit.
And finally, we have to frame inheritance as a mission, not a transaction.
And the critical warning remains. The illusion of legal shortcuts is the greatest threat to your legacy.
It really is. Transferring assets without proper legal process, especially putting children on deeds prematurely, guarantees massive financial headaches later.
Particularly the loss of the step-up valuation and the exposure to new creditors.
Invest the time, talk to the local legal professionals, and secure the title now.
The source material leaves us with a provocative and, I think, a necessary final thought. The children are the future of any nation, but only if they are left more than just hope. They need order, clarity, values, and ground they can actually stand on. They need a structural element they can rely on.
So the question we leave you with this week is this. Beyond the property deeds or the financial accounts, what structural element have you intentionally put in place this week? A difficult conversation, a legal appointment, a structured value lesson, to ensure that your purpose, and not just your assets, survives you.
The preparation is the legacy. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.